Good morning, members. Before we begin the meeting, may I remind members that today we have a full-day meeting, and we need the Secretariat to order lunch on your behalf. Please fill out the lunch order form and hand it over to the page before 11:15 so that you may enjoy the lunch you ordered in conference number 2. May I also remind members that we shall listen to the public views on 3 separate topics, first of which will be the operation of shopping centers in public housing. So we'll remind government representatives, the deputations, and individuals to today's meeting. And you may pull on your handset and select the channel as appropriate. Channel 0 is the floor. Channel 1 is Chinese. Channel 2 is English. And Channel 3 is Putonghua. If necessary, our staff will provide assistance. Today we have 3 items till 7:15 in the evening. So after the conclusion of the first item, which is the operations of shopping center in public housing, which have 2 sessions, the meeting will be suspended and be resumed at 2 o'clock on the second item. And I urge deputations and individuals to take note that the written submissions and the oral representations to the subcommittee is not protected under the LegCo Power and Privilege Ordinance. To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, the attendees must obey the order and will not obstruct the meeting. And the details of the regulations, please take reference with the notice to the public on attending the meetings or listening in at the LegCo complex. This notice has already been attached to the letter from the Secretariat and as well as been tabled. And the members of the public who are at the spectator stand can receive the notice from the security staff of LegCo. And first, can we have the Undersecretary for Transport and Housing, Dr. Raymond So, to make a short speech.
Good morning. We thank the subcommittee for holding the meeting and inviting the administration to participate so that we can listen to the views of all parties concerned. Before this meeting, concerning the letters from Mr. Ao Him and Mrs. Regina Yip, the government has responded and provided the e-copies of some documents. We have provided many documents on the government's role in regard to these shopping centers. And we have also provided responses to questions. We will be very glad to listen to members' views and the deputation's views. The Transport and Housing Bureau and other departments will also be coordinated. Now, we have other officials, Ms. Wong, Deputy Director of Housing, responsible for estate management. There is also Ms. Choi, Chief Surveyor. And now we invite the deputations and individuals to speak. First, DAB, Deputy Spokesman on Housing Matters, Mr. Chen Chong. 3 minutes each. Mr. Chen, good morning. Now, I'd like to talk about the management of shopping centers in public housing estates. Now, for those shopping centers sold, that is sold to Link, many of which they also sold in turn. Now, many of the residents are elderly, so for the newly purchased shopping centers, now many of them have been upgraded to more upclass, upscale operations, so that the elderly have difficulty affording the goods. And we also hope that the government can help the NGOs. And they signed leases, rental agreements, but they have problems with the new owners. Now, also there are some shopping centers run by the buildings department. Now, some of them were only completed after the Link took over other units, and some other shopping centers are those that Link would not purchase, and those are old estates, and the pedestrian flow is limited, and the rents increase at the market pace. Many of these are shops of long standing, but because of rent increase, they had to close. So we hope that the Transport and Housing Bureau and the Buildings Department can try to limit the rent increases so that the shopping centers can continue to operate, and the rents should not follow the market, but should be in keeping with the earning capacity of the operators. Now, it's very easy to recover these units and lease them out, but they may not be for the right uses. Next, Tin Shui Wai, People's Livelihood Concern Platform, Mr. Tong. Now, the SC will discuss about the parking facilities. Now, most commercial facilities were originally under the HA Housing Authority, and then there was this secret agreement signed, and there were restrictions on the operations and areas of the shopping centers and other commercial facilities. Now, for these new development areas, the assumption is that the people will go back to the old shopping centers, so there is limited supply. And this privatization measure is very harmful. Now, so the property developers are very much resented. Now, the HA in 2005 sold most of the shopping centers. Now, those already still being run by the HA is very much welcomed by the residents because they are selling at lower prices, and take the example of Tin Yan Estate Shopping Center. Now, in 2011, the HA passed a proposal to improve the facilities, but actually this didn't materialize, and there should be more seats and drinking fountains. Now, we should increase the competitiveness of these shopping centers. Now, Link shopping centers have lots of problems. The footbridges are inadequate, and the rooftop space is all taken up by Link. Now, and at Tin Yan Estate, there is too little space for the medical clinics. And when there are rats, rodents in the restaurants in a shopping center, the government should enforce hygiene requirements. Now, the HA should be more alert to what's happening. Next, Mr. Kwong Mantik. When I was young, I heard about the Link. It said that the Link kicks out the small operators. Now it's called Link Rate, but there's been no improvement. Things are getting worse. The shopping centers or public housing estates should serve the residents. Link beautified many of the shopping centers, but they never really considered the residents' needs. Take Yao Oi Estate and On Ting Estate Shopping Center. The Link renovated on a large scale and won many awards. And then it raised rents, and the original small operators were forced out, and rents rose sharply. Now, also, Link ignored the public's needs. It made alterations to the footbridge B, the operating hours, so that the footbridge is only open during the day rather than 24 hours. Now, the New People's Party wrote to them, and they did make some improvement. Now, it is now said that the Link will sell to Gore Capital, but they will not really heed the residents' needs. Now, of course, they try to make more profits, but the government should monitor more so that Link can be more humane, and the government should take the initiative to get more benefits for the public from these Link and other operators. Next, Civic Party, Mr. Mack. Now, the deeds of mutual covenants require that the buyers should be responsible for some of the maintenance costs. Now, the Shui Wo Estate stipulates certain percentages of sharing the maintenance cost burden. Now, also in the document of sale from HA to this ratio, the split ratio covenant, is also was also there, but they never really followed this ratio, and the public paid over $10 million in excess of water charges. Now, this shared ratio was actually not operative. Now, according to the DMC of Shui Wo Estate, the property owner should take care of the lifts. Now, the shopping center now should be responsible for maintaining the lifts. The owner used to be Link, and now is the Emperor Group. Now, however, this is not actually the case for some of the lifts. There are 2 lifts now. These lifts are public facilities. The shared ratio is not applied to the lift maintenance, and the Shui Wo Estate owners paid for the maintenance of these two lifts, whereas the Link and the Emperor Group never paid a cent. And these property owners didn't really follow the DMC, and the government didn't monitor that. So the Civic Party demands that the shared ratio must be observed. The HA should help as quickly as possible so that the responsibility of maintenance costs is properly delineated. A New People's Party. Now the shopping centers or public housing estates used to be the HA's assets. They are supposed to serve the residents rather than for profit. Now, these should be self-sufficient communities, and this is a concept of public housing. Now, Link has been trying to make the most profits, and it doesn't heed people's needs. And these used to be HA assets, and the government should be responsible. Now, after the Link is listed, things get worse. Now it forced out the small operators. It sold some assets in one form or another, and the small operators are finding it more and more difficult. For instance, Quang Estate in Sha Tin, recently the market was renovated. Rents were increased sharply. The small operators could not continue to operate, so they cannot survive. Quang Yun Estate now has the shopping center has a scattered design, and there are lots of steps. And the Transport and Housing Bureau is certainly aware of these conditions. We demanded that there should be more shelter or cover and more escalators, because this is a 30-year housing estate, but our voices are not heard. Now, the Link should be responsible for daily management, but the horticulture, the cleaning, has been very lackluster despite our repeated requests. Now, the Lands Department should monitor the operations of Link. Now, the Link has little social commitment. The government should enhance its monitoring role.
Mr. Chen Chi-ho, who was late, now let him have your turn. Thank you, Chairman. Today's the Link shares have reached new high, so that demonstrated and is actually doing a better job as a community development officer. So there are 2 shopping centers in my area have been owned by the Link. So a lot of details we can see this company had completely disregard management quality and the residents' interests and only pursued money making. So our main tech shopping center estate, the toilet booths have been without toilet paper for a long time, and the taps were not repaired for a long time. While there's not enough hand washing spray, and with very damp floors with the poor hygiene conditions. And we see to the main tech shopping center basketball court, some of the basketball hoops have been greatly damaged as if they will fall and endanger the users. The main tech center glass doors have been destroyed by typhoon for 9 months and without not maintained. So for a company with over $100 billion capitalization, I couldn't even fix the toilets at the basketball court and the glass doors properly. So looking from the details, if not even fixed the basics, despite receiving so many complaints, what is any commitment to the community and their own shopping center? Though economically speaking, the more money a shopping center speak, does that mean that the management is improving and getting more support from the residents? So using my example is opposing case. It makes so much money because they were at a disadvantaged position. They become the only shopping center in the area, so all the residents were forced to patronize it. So it had become the only source of the foodstuff and fresh provisions. So in terms, looking at the Takming estate for the Takming Estate Warming Yut Hinming Court, a 20,000 strong community, there are only 1 shopping center, no shopping supermarket and no wet markets. And when there's a market renovated, they have to walk 30 minutes to the wet market in another district, and yet the Link is not willing to provide feeder transport for the shoppers' convenience. This regardless the survival of residents. And just a few days ago, the press reported when the HA disposed of the properties, the Link is supposed to split the maintenance fees, which is very dissatisfied. Ms. Judy Chen, Southern District Councillor. First, on behalf of the residents who live in the areas with Link shopping centers, I thank the legislature in providing a platform for it to speak at, because previously we have no place to air the grievances. The formation of Link was due to unique historical factors. However, it showed the responsibility of serving 0.6 million POH residents. Unfortunately, the Link had managed to squeeze every money through financial engineering and refurbishment, have led to shops rent spike and even outsourced management and even the disposal properties to increase their revenue and disregard the daily needs of the POH residents. After the disposal of the facilities, there's nowhere to do the shopping and nowhere to park and even have their passageway blocked. And after driving out the tenants, these shops have been left vacant, and the and no management of the surrounding areas, while the market stalls and the clinic and the basic community facilities vanished one by one, which has seriously affected our daily life. So I would like to raise two main points of concern to the chairman. One will be the Pt1 estate in the Southern District. For the Pt1 estate shopping center, after being sold by Link in 2015, the new owner had requested the original tenants to vacate the shopping center to remodel into an international school. The Pt1 shopping center is serving about 17,000 people, and let's say there's quite a few years had passed now to 2018. The shopping center is still only have one 7-Eleven. So even the renovation works have been completed, and yet the shops still vacant. And for the Hangman Estate in the Eastern District, we had a site visit. We see a lot of shops have been covered on hoarding. There's only one Welcome or package shop supermarket left, and it's been shrinking. Since they have to walk some distance uphill as if they're living in an island, so some of the mobility impaired elderly would rely on the neighbors to help them do their grocery shopping. So the New People's Party have some suggestions. Maybe I can submit your suggestions in writing. Ms. Chan-Po Ying. So I have a question to the chairman. So I will not ask this to the undersecretary, because the boss of the undersecretary, which is the CE, the Carrie Lam, that had no solutions towards the link issue. So may I ask the chairman, at least at the convener to the meeting, do you agree that we have high expectations of this subcommittee? How since the formation in January, which has been about over 6 months, and yet the public hearing didn't convene until now. I believe that the members are quite familiar with the ways of the link. Recently, this NGO doing a survey, about 80% of the respondents have a negative perception of link because they're very much aware of the deeds. So the focus is on what can the government do, what can the legislative force government to take what kind of action. My suggestion would be this subcommittee should be devoted to force the government to give an account. In the opening speech, the Secretary claims that they have submitted all the relevant documents like the land leases and the DMC. Look at the public have been asking the administration providing these kind of documents, but to no avail. But finally, managed to obtain them through the subcommittee. We can't stay on like this. You can't just throw out all the information. So, as the person in charge, you have to tell the public what happened back then. Why you're not able to enforce the DMC or allow the buyers to go through the loopholes? You'll only be aware, but notified by the outsiders. Maybe you're in a rush to dispose of properties and not scrutinize the provisions enough. So as we can see, the land leases. So you haven't stipulated that a wet market we had to preserve, and therefore the link can able to shrink the wet market or close it off together. And for the common areas, so it belongs to HA. For any alteration, it must obtain the consent of other parties, and like nothing could be done. And these are this kind of loopholes. So back then you informed the public, and Link cannot dispose the property by individual slot, but only as a whole. But it turned out, as long as HA is not a single owner or haven't kept a one residential unit, that the parking spaces can be sold off bit by bit, which led to trouble today. The HA, please declare and THB what had gone wrong and come clean to the public. And instead of going through the emotions until the next media expose. Next, NGO Link Concern Tenancy Group, Mr. Chen Shun-yuk, made an inquiry. Have we ever invited the Link or the new owners to the meeting? Since we have as a lot of the deputations concerned about the current state, and we have the Undersecretary with us. However, for the Link and the land owners, have we ever give them any invitation? After the Link disposal of certain properties have an impact to different NGOs. So looking back to the recent news for the March 15, 2016, that the 5 social service units in Kwangti Estate have later rent hike and been charged at de facto management fees. So even though the HA have intervened, at the end the 5 social service units refused to enter new tenancy and all vacated premises. And these units have kindergarten, youth and family services and community services. And at the following day, March 16, 2016, Autaka Choya Shopping Center will plan to double their rent to 2 NGOs, and to no avail that they start charging management fees. And for 2017, August 13, at the Sun Chinwei Shopping Center by the Link, which have been bought this year by 460 million, that the Hong Kong Lutheran has been suffered a rent hike of 1.6 times. And for the November 30, 2013, the Green Organization has been subject to rent hikes and forced to be evicted later. And Regina Lau, back in December 2016, have concerned that some of the ward offices of the NPP may be facing eviction. And on May 1st, 2018, Fucheng Estate of Sun Shui Po and the Social Service Center, in collaboration with the curators, have been evicted by the Link in last July and August. As Link make further disposal, the NGO service unit will be facing eviction or facing de facto rent increases. And back then, the HA would reserve designated units for social subvented organizations. However, this is no longer the practice. I hope the administration to ensure in the further divestment and offer protection to this social service units. So what we can do, I hope the government can set up an inspection team. So with this divested units, about 10 or 20 of the service units are still affected. Can the government take the lead to investigate and to ensure that the NGOs will not be affected by this property disposal?
Next is Lee Chui King. Now I have several viewpoints. Ms. Carrie Lam says that she can't do anything about it. Now in 2005, the Link bought the markets and car park facilities. The government was prepared to buy back the shareholding. Now, in fact, the government has left everything to the market. Now, this was a major decision. Was there public consultation of the views of those 600,000 households living in public housing estates? Now, among the stakeholders, now if you get a 25% support, you can have an influence on the policies. Now, the Treasury set aside $220 billion. Now, this can be used to buy back the shareholding. Now, the government adheres to a small government policy that is mistaken. Now, public assets should serve the public. Now, for the residents, we just want to buy cheap food, enjoy services locally, and the elderly and the housewives cannot travel too far. Now, one public market is not enough because the residents cannot travel very far to a public market. Now, in some estates, there is only a 7-Eleven shop. Many of the shops are vacant. There is no market. So these are daily necessities that people cannot buy. Now, on the shareholding issue, now I'm also a shareholder. I could go to their annual meeting, but I have no influence. Now, the transnationals take over. They were 97% in 2014. Next, Polytechnic University Policy Research Center. Now, recently we were commissioned to conduct a simple study on link. We interviewed 1,024 persons. The survey was conducted very carefully. Now, over a decade ago, when the administration decided to sell the HA's assets to the link, the public were mostly in support, and the challengers were thought to be obstructive. Now, after over a decade, we find the public's views have changed. Nearly 80% of the respondents felt negatively about the performance of Link. 85% of respondents are unhappy with the sale of shops by Link in recent years. Now, almost 80% doesn't agree that there's nothing the government can do. 75% feel that the government should consider buying back the assets from Link. Now, there might be technical problems, but it's clear that the public's views have changed. And I won't repeat many of the points raised. However, now this is a major group that affects people's livelihood. Now, we should note the deterioration in their performance. And back then, the Link said that they would continue to serve society, but after 13 years, now in some housing estates, there is no market. In some estates, the shops are sold individually, and there is little security for the tenants, and there is a lot of inconvenience to the users. Now, the government and the Link made commitments back then. The government should ensure that the commitments should be met. It cannot be said that just because the Link has been listed, nothing should be done. Next, Link Watch, Mr. Feng Xiu Pan. Now, as Professor Chung said, the survey reflects the public's views. The public support the government's direct repurchase of the Link-run shopping centers. There has been a lot of negative impact on the Link. Now, Link Watch has conducted surveys, studied leases, and organized the public to monitor Link. Now, we are opposed to government continuing to privatize utilities and transport and other services. Now, these should be services enjoyed by the community. The government should be responsible for providing those services. The Link was listed 13 years ago. Now, the public has suffered the ill effects of privatization. The concerns over the years materialized. Now, the group brought in more chains, forced out the small operators, and cut the staff substantially. Now, for shopping centers where the consumption ability or capacity is not high, now there has been very little service. Now, Carrie Lam and the government say that the government should said that the public should bear the consequences. Now, is it that the government caused the problem because it didn't really fight the battle? Now, nearly 80% of the public thinks that the government is not powerless. It should resolve the problem. Now, before Mrs. Lam took office, she said that this is a major concern, but now she says that little could be done. Now, Link and Gore Capital dare not face the public at LegCo, and this subcommittee should be focused on discussing the Link problem. Now, Link Watch survey shows that over 70% support direct repurchase of the shareholding. Next, Ms. Lo Xiu Lan. Now, Hong Kong has been reunified with the mainland. A few months after Tung Chee-hwa took office, he didn't consult the public, and then he started to sell the public assets. And now the public are suffering. The food is expensive, the rents are high, and the staff have to work long hours. Tung Chee-hwa now he performed so poorly that he had to resign on excuses. Now, I said I would knock on his head to wake him up so that he wouldn't sell our shopping centers. Now, it's said that the British can take back Hong Kong. Now actually we want our Hong Kong back. It's Mr. Deng Xiaoping said that we should get back Hong Kong from the British, but Pt1 sold the assets to the market. Now this is the goose that lays the golden eggs. So why do you sell the asset? So they are now making all the money. They are making heaps of profits. And the big businesses take advantage of smaller ones. The businesses take advantage of the public. He didn't consult us. Now, Hong Kong people, these are our assets. Your time is up. Next. Your time is up. Next. Alliance of concern about the Gore capital. Ms. Cheung. Madam Low, please continue. Please stop speaking. If you do not stop speaking, I will ask the staff to invite you to go out. Ms. Cheung. Now I looked up some information. I noted that Link Watch earlier this year conducted a survey, and now the Link sold 17 shopping centers. Just before that, they did a survey and they asked about the residents of the 16 public housing estates. They asked what were the concerns of the shops. It's found that 84% of the shops feared rent increases. A similar percentage are concerned that ultimately they would be forced out. And nearly 30% of the shop owners felt that they could not accept rent increases more than 10%. 20% feel that they couldn't afford any rent increase at all. Now, so many of the shops feel that they cannot continue to operate. Now, since end of 2017, now many of the shops will find their tenancies expired. Now, we inquired whether there have been large increases under Gore Capital, because they claim that they would be conscientious and keep the small shops. But when we asked the shops, now they were unanimous in saying that they now face an even greater evil in Gore Capital. They were going to increase rent by 45% and eventually is 30%. Now, so the rents increases are larger by the year. Eventually is 30% in the third year. Now, the shop operators complained that Gore Capital never consulted or discussed with the operators. Now, the tenancies are now long expired, and they even went after the operators for the differences in rents. Now, so things are not improved after the sale to Gore Capital. So if the government doesn't buy back the shopping centers, the problem will never be fully resolved. Next.
Ms. Chu Mun Chen. So Carrie Lam once said the share prices of Link was too high, and therefore buying back Link is a stupid thing. And some actually believe that buyback was not a good idea. So those who are not living in shopping estate, not managed for a Link shopping center, would not feel the pain. So Carrie Lam thinks that buying back the Link is unwise. They let the district councillors once threaten eviction of the ward officers and start to feel the pain. Therefore, to not that's not fair to only let the residents of in Link own shopping centers to feel the pain. I don't live in one of those estates myself, but I very much agree that we should buy back the Link. Even some young people, those who have more disposable income and don't mind higher prices in the renovated shopping center. However, the goal of the Link is not to serve the public, but to speculate property and to renovate the shopping center so that it could be disposed at a higher price. So it only have the public in mind when renovating the shopping centers. It will be too late when they see the high prices. After the property have been disposed, the new buyer will not respect under the commitment to serve the nearby residents, and with only the purpose to make more profits. Instead of having a balanced tenants mix in HA shopping centers for the public to purchase their foodstuff and daily necessities, it could be turned into a single international school or a residential home for the elderly. In the long run, even though I don't live in an area with lane shopping centers, however, they would also be indirectly affected. After the Link have drive out these small businesses, they would force to relocate to other shopping centers or other shops to also drive up the rents of other shopping centers. And then this small shop will be replaced by a chain stores, and the expensive rent will be passed on for the entire Hong Kong population. So the entire Hong Kong population will suffer. While the Treasury is awash with cap, it should have able to buy back the Link. Ms. Tai Yu Ching. So we have listened to a lot of deputations airing their views. We found out that in the previous disposal of 16 properties to Gore Capital, so who claims to be a conscientious owner. However, we find out how horrible they are, even more aggressive than the Link. So the Link had taken over the HA estate for shopping center for 14 years and aimed to enhance the quality of life. And through their asset optimization program, it's just really renovations to create value for the community and the residents. This all sound good. They also organize activities, for example, these activities as well as other social responsibility initiatives to help the young people to develop a better future. So as a young people, I can tell you that Link really helped us to develop a better future. Looking at what the Link did, besides renovating the shopping centers, where the money come from, they actually come from the tenants. After this asset optimization program, so every year or every time they enter discussing a new tenancy agreements, they will sharp rent raise. So in the pretext of renovations, they want to enhance the quality of life to keep on jacking up the rent. Besides the small shop owners suffering, the residents were also deeply affected. After the rent increases, the old shop and small business will be forced to close. So who could actually afford expensive rent but just to chain stores? In every center in district, there are more like the same shops and restaurants. There's no improvement to our quality of life. I have a friend who lived in Tucheng Estate, and now there are new luxury development in the Namchang station. So the link claims that since the shopping center available nearby, so the Fucheng shopping center will be converted into a wet market. However, the shopping center and the station have yet to be completed, and yet the Fucheng shopping center has evicted all the tenants, including a Japan home and parking shop. There's only one Cha Chan Teng left. So where do the residents do their shopping? So now that we are left with two shopping centers that could not be patronized. So the link only want to pursue profit and fail to cater to the residents' interests. Sorry, your time is up. Next, Ms. Ng Kai Yan. So I'll finish out where for Ms. Tai. So according to the survey from Link Watch, the respondents, about almost half of the respondents agree that for the disposal of link of public housing estate shopping centers, and the government should buy back directly. About 30% think is very feasible. So together, we have almost 80% of the respondents agree that the government should buy back directly the PRH shopping centers. First, we have to reflect what does the community really needs. So the PR of the Gulf capital spin a very good tale, and it claims that the shopping center is the hub of the shopping estate. However, what it did is contrary to what is claimed. So speaking of link, a lot of these shopping centers only have the minimum requirement is to ensure that the residents can get their daily necessities like a toothpaste and toothbrush. It is something as basic able to satisfy the need of the entire community. For a functioning community, it should be diversified and for the residents and the small shop owners to survive, because their shop could as well be their livelihood. Shouldn't the of course the residents need to be accommodated. However, shouldn't the shop owners' interests be catered as well? We can see the link, all the new owners taken over from the disposed properties by Link. They will not pay any attention to that. So they will continue to drive out the small businesses and avoid the pluralistic development community. So you actually see the cookie cutter shopping centers. For example, they have the Hang On and Kwang Yun Night Bazaar that actually have quite almost the same identical 10 stall owners mix. Is that really a diversified space to promote community development? And to afford the same space for residents and the shop owners to survive, because these two are supposed to be mutually beneficial. Then unlike the big consortiums who only exploit the public interest to maximize their profit, even if it is a legacy issue. However, it's still an issue. I hope that the government can buy back the shopping centers owned by Link and by other owners to ensure the public interest. Next, Mr. Hatim Kwan from NPP. Good morning, Chairman. So the deputations have spoken at length on the views of the Link-owned properties. So I've been serving in the Shakao estate in Shatin. So just what is speak about what I saw. So after the acquisition of a Shakao shopping center, it all gone through a major renovations and its credit management and the rent determining mechanism have lacked check and balance. Previously, back in the HA days, this district stakeholders can offer suggestions and ask them to do something for the good of the public through a transfer mechanism, for example, through the Estate Management Advisory Committee. And after the acquisition by a Link, the district organizations, the mutual aid organizations, and the Chamber of Commerce holding joint meetings, the Link representatives have been absent for quite a number of years and disregard the views of community stakeholders. Next, on the rent increase on small owners, take our estate for example. So the first offer is 40% rise. So even after lobbying on small owners or laid out their books for increase of 40% is just the same effect of driving them out. But at the end, the rent increase is only settled at 30-something%, and the shop owners are rather helpless. And since the housing estate are rather grassroots, the shop the rent increases, they would simply pass on the increases to the residents that would exacerbate the poverty gap. So even though the rent have an increased rent every year, the management is bad. For the 2017 summer, our shopping center, from the shopping center, the wet markets and all three escalators went out of order, which were reported by the press, and one set of escalators have been out of order for 26 odd days with no explanation given by the Link, which had infuriated the community. And the Shaka estate have aging population. Most of them are wheelchair bound or mobility impaired. We mentioned to Link that some of the doors maybe could be converted to automatic doors. However, the proposal did not get any response. And for the public toilets at the shopping centers have been suffered strong odors. So the shopping center looked very nice. Thank you, Mr. Ha. Mr. Laikachan. I've been living in housing estate, Mailim estate for 26 years. About 13 years, we do not have the Link ownership, and the later 13 years we have the Link ownership. So we've gone through a good phase, and now we're miserable. How miserable? If you've been to Taiwan, you would know. The nearby shopping centers rely on us. The Meicheng Court only have one 7-Eleven. Meicheng Court have no shops, only rely on the Meilam shopping centers. And Meitin Estate have a dozen or shops. Recently, the shops suffered from rent increases. A lot of shops have closed down to laundry mat, and the store have closed. The school uniform shops have closed. So I think our estate has been 40 years old, and there are a lot of frequent maintenance. And yet the hardware shop has also closed down as well. Instead, we have organic food shops. Well, the item would have gone north of $100. So could I afford it every day? For the wet markets, a lot of stalls have closed down. A lot of my the elders have departed the business, and recently the Taipei market wouldn't have to be renovated. So there's nothing available for sale in the wet market. So a meal at a shopping center used to cost $30-something. Now it costs over $50. It's just a meal. However, the rent increase seems to match that of the property prices. I don't want to resort to foul language. On my recent visit to my friend for Shatway Cock Estate and the whole wet market, 40 or 50 stalls have been left vacant. And my friend explained, just go to Chunwan then. Well, that means walking for quite some distance or taking a bus. So what's the point of having a link here, since you're not able to grassroots and the PRH residents, and you close down all the businesses, and yet the prices are not affordable? So Carrie Lam should stop claiming Link is one of the big three mountains. So we came across that every day. And please stop acting chicken. So a lot of people, deputations listen to cite the survey. The public opinion is clear. So the treasury is flush with money. The buyback is inevitable. So Carrie Lam should stop acting chicken. Mr. Tam Wing-yin.
Now, my views are similar as Mr. Lai's. Now, I live at Butterfly Estate in Tuen Mun. Now, Butterfly Estate Shopping Center doesn't just serve our estate. There are other housing developments nearby, 2 public housing estates, and also some private housing developments nearby also rely on it. Now, after Link bought the shopping center, there are less and less small operators. There's now no small operator run restaurant. Most old shops have closed. There's only one stationery shop in a remote corner. Originally, the shopping center had a large open space, a large public space for the elderly to rest. This public space also allows them to socialize, but now half of the public space has been turned over to the shop operators. The remainder is a rather enclosed corner, and so people cannot socialize and communicate properly there. Now, speakers have noted that there are only chain stores in the Link shopping centers. After Link was listed, the rent increases have been about 20% a year. Now, actually, shops' rent increases in the rest of the territory are about only 5% a year. So after Link took over, the rent increases have been excessive, and small operators have been forced out. So I agree that the government should buy back the shopping centers from Link. Thank you. Next, Center for Rights of the Elderly. I am a public housing resident. In 2005, the government sold 180 shopping centers to the link rate, which is now link rate. The government didn't monitor and regulate when it sold off to the link. It sold very cheaply. It didn't ensure that the link would fulfill its public obligations. It should have stipulated that this is public asset and you should do this and that. But now the link rate seems free to raise rents as it pleases. And the government says there's little it can do, so this is irresponsible. Back then you said you were poor, so you sold off the assets, but now the government is so rich. How can it say it can do little? It should act in response to the consequences of the sale years ago. The public is suffering. Our daily necessities are too expensive, or we can't even buy them. Now, whereas one can buy these various goods in shopping centers that haven't been sold to the private sector. Now there are hardware shops, clothing stores. But for the shopping centers that have been divested, the shops are now the chain stores, and the small operators cannot survive due to the rent increases. The shop space is now more expensive than gold. The government says it will not bear it cannot do much. The government should be being the responsible party, should think of a way to resolve the problem. Next, the concern group about the divesting of public services. Now, Karl Marx said capital will make the world dirty. It will squeeze every drop of blood. Now, there is now socialism in this world. Now, we should also ensure that there are enough services for the elderly and for health care. We think that the government actually should be able to do certain things, like repurchasing the shareholding from Link, or it can buy back some shopping centers. It can study the opening up. It should study opening up more shops which are now restricted to certain clienteles. As long as the shopping center was originally serving the broad public, the current landlord should take on the responsibility. Now, in capitalist society, unscrupulous landlords will make more profit. This is true in the case of Link. The government should make sure that it fulfill its responsibility. In that case, the share price of Link will fall sharply and we would be able to buy back the shares cheaply. Now we have to end this session at 11:45 because there will be other speakers in the next session. I have to leave 5 minutes to the Undersecretary to respond. I will also leave some time for members to speak. Out him, Chu Hoi Tek, Regina Yip, and Leung Yu Chung. Yong Hoi Yan, 5. 2 minutes each, 2.5 minutes each, because there will be many speakers in the next session. So 2.5 minutes, including the answer. So please be succinct. First, I'll him. Thank you, Chairman. Now, we thank the deputations and the individuals for coming to LegCo today to speak on this issue on the shopping centers and later on the car parking facilities and so on. Now, recently we noted that there are problems at shopping centers. Now, it's been reported that the split ratio covenant hasn't been really observed. Now, perhaps Mr. So, the Undersecretary for THB, can tell us whether you really implemented the covenant. Now, concerning this split ratio covenant, now normally the covenant says that there's going to be sharing of certain costs for these public spaces. Now, the housing authority has acceded to, in response to the requirements, shared some of the expenses, and the housing authority follows the DMC, and it shares the maintenance costs of the indivisible shares, and so it in the sales agreement to the Link, now where the owner sells the asset, this split ratio covenant should be included, and the buyer should sign an agreement to follow this covenant. Now, if the owner breaches this covenant, the HA will remind it, and it will take action to maintain this covenant. Now, I'd like to remind members that according to ROP 83A, now if you have direct or indirect pecuniary interest on any matter to be discussed, please disclose the interest before you speak. Next, Chu Hoi Tek. I'd like to follow up on Chow Him's question. Now, the government should have noted FedWire's report about the Shuo Estate case. Now, they have over $20 million cost for maintenance of the drain pipes. Now, the owners corporation seemed unaware of the split ratio covenant, and it shared the costs on the volume of water consumed, and Link now shared a lower percentage so than it should. So the small operators paid $10 million of the cost. So the small operators perhaps were unaware of their right, so the covenant was not enforced. Now, what can the HA do in the Shuo Estate case? Now, we thank Mr. Chu for his question. We have noted this report in the media, and we are now gathering information on the arrangement in this case. Now, we can share with you that if we find that an owner has not followed the covenant, we will deal with that in a serious way, and we would be welcome to others reminding us to follow up.
For the Shuo court case, we have the homeowners and then the new buyer, and as far as I understand, the HA has no proprietary interest. Well, taking a step back, so when you divested to Link, you entered a split ratio covenant with the Link. So for the bigger picture, would you have any role to play? So instead of insisting about whether the homeowners have to safeguard their rights, we will definitely follow up, because we'll still try to ascertain the facts. So after we are aware of this reporting, and we'll deal with it accordingly. Ms. Regina Yip, Chairman, you just heard that the deputations, that the Link had just squeezed every penny, and after the disposal by the Link, the conditions deteriorated. For those who bought the shopping centers, they just want to just flip to turn into international school RCHEs and want to sell at a good price, and want to divest the parking spaces at extreme high prices. So I have a list of the buyers. Why can the Link able to divest the properties? Because SFC accept the suggestion of the Financial Development Council and allowing the 10% of the total assets, a 10% cap on investment property. So if you develop your property in Beijing, in Guangzhou, or even have the new projects and sell off the properties when there is concrete no profit. For the CEO, Mr. Wang Guolok, have you ever declared the interest? And how can FSC offer any remedy? So after selling the properties, there have been management. For Chinma Court and Hingmen Estate, the shopping center are excluded and totally closed down. I think the Financial Development Council should exist, even though it may not exist, and we should discuss with the FCC that how do we offer remedy. Undersecretary, thank you for the Mr. Regina Yip's advice. On the under SFC rules, we must stress that before the amendment of the rules, they could divest their properties. However, previously, you need to hold 90% of rental property. Now, the ratio is there's a change in ratio. However, they'll be entitled to sell properties before. Because that I already know for the Financial Development Council, and allow the use gross asset value instead of net asset value, allow it to act as developer. So allow it to divest properties in order to become developer in disregard of public interest. It's a major loophole. Don't we need to have SFC and the Financial Development Council be here? How would it allow this? Have Wang Huatlong declare his interest and any remedy to be offered in the future? I believe that will take some time for you to respond. Maybe you could offer a detailed response to Ms. Virginia Lau's question. Mr. Liang Yusheng. So just now, Virginia Lau's question was for the secretary. How is there any follow-up to follow? So not only the link operations have been problem-ridden, and the disposed properties under new management have severely affected nearby residents. For example, the common areas that would need to be maintained. However, it would not have the consent. The HA could not take further action for the sitting out areas, and a claim to close off for maintenance, and the HA could do nothing about it, and yet the public cannot enjoy it. So this happened everywhere. So is HA have the hands tied, or just look the other way and let the things keep the way they are? Thank you for Mr. Liang's question. So after the divested property, so according to DMC and the restricted confidence, the management will carry out in accordance with the documents, and some venues and the public have to have the right of way. We'll make sure that this is enforced. If there's no restrictions in the land lease, and with no time, which is precise monitoring the landowner's worthy and observing the confidence, we have to rely on the existing legislation. If there's no non-compliance, we have no right to interfere with their day-to-day operations. Does that mean that will be kept poorly maintained and the area can be kept closed as they wish? We shall act in accordance with the land leases. I think you should let the Undersecretary to answer. He claimed he had already provided the answer. There's nothing to do in the land leases. What if they please just don't lift up passages. So when divesting a property, you should have understood this, or maybe the possible consequences. Is there any way to stop them? And for the initial public offering document, we'll list out the regulations. If the corporation have not violated any of the laws, we have no right to interfere with the operations. And finally, Eunice Young. Just now I heard from the deputations have made a complaints on the link. For example, there's no toilet paper in the toilets, or not meeting public expectations. My question for the Undersecretary: have you been proactively to tackle this? You claim that you will look at the land leases. Have you actually institute prosecution against link? If there's no toilet paper in the public toilets, this is simply not meeting public expectations as a violation of the land lease conditions. For such small things, for this small offenses have the Bureau act upon them. And thank you, Ms. Young's question. In dealing with land leases non-compliances, like on the private lots, upon receiving complaints, we'll follow up. If we found any issues with deferring to the district land office to take enforcement action. For any follow-up requests, we're glad to investigate whether they have respond accordingly. From time to time, for example, for referral from district organizations and the near residents, as well as members' complaints, we'll forward them to the district land office for enforcement action. And in the past, have you referred any cases to DLO? Yes, it happened in the past. Recently, there are a few cases being processed, and the reply have been given to the members. To link or to the relevant members, this is not the a member's question, have you ever sued the link for the offenses? And the DLO have ordered the link to care rectification, especially for land lease violations. They will discuss with the owners on how it will be rectified, because some of these situations are unique. For example, where these shopping center services will be affected. And hope that besides dealing with economic compliances, we have to protect the needs of the public. So we referred to the DLO, and the DLO have taken enforcement action. We hope that THB could play the monitoring role instead of referring that to DLO and wash their hands off. So monitoring is the duty of the government. For the remaining time, I will invite the Undersecretary to respond to the deputations. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the advice for the deputations and the members' questionings and comments. We very much understand that the link and the PRH estate shopping centers is a deeply troubling issue. So back in 2005, after the CFA judgment, as long as the owner have not violated DMC and the land leases and the restrictive covenants, we have no right to interfere in the operations. And CFA is well aware that after the listing of the link RIT, there will have anticipate changes to the mode of operation. If there are non-compliance with divest shopping center, will refer to DLA for stringent enforcement. And there have been cases in the past where it has taken place. I hope appeal to members, if you have any such cases, please refer them to us. And please keep quiet. Please, Undersecretary, finish. Please continue, Undersecretary. Please stop speaking. So some deputations mention of the idea of a buyback. On multiple occasions, the government has ruled out buyback because it's simply that transferring public resources to the private market that would reap great benefits to the Link shareholders. Looking at the closing price of Link on Friday, will take about 150 billion, which is a colossal expenditure. And some deputations mentioned whether we can purchase some part of the Link to influence the operations. According to the Link REIT rules, if we purchase some of the shares and hope to influence its operations, it's not possible. These shares would have to do with the organizations. We have to maintain the consent of some of these shareholders. Even these shareholders, the government shares, will not have the voting rights in any case. We have not able to influence the operations. The government responds to propose the setting up the new shopping centers and new shopping and housing estate. We can introduce new shopping centers and also consider the needs of the residents. Will engage consultants to carry out studies to see which of the shops are suitable, so that with the new shopping housing estates there will be markets, and to ensure to provide convenience to the residents. And Chief Executive Policy Director would take an innovative mindset in Hongshui, Kyutin, Shuai, and Chongqing to set up new public markets. And for the areas where there tends to be a shortage of the public markets, we could consider the feasibility of setting up new markets as well.
Now, the deputations and individuals' views will be put on the record, and they will be followed up We thank you for taking part in the meeting. This is the end of this session. The next session will begin after 5 minutes.